So that means that the key element is just to recognize what is happening, Richie?
Yes, I think that is the key element, but it is, as we say in English, I don't know what the right expression is in Spanish, it is easier said than done, meaning that we can say that, and that's true, but in order to actually embody that, it really requires practice, because it is, for most of us, we're so externally oriented, we pay so little attention to our own mind, it takes familiarization. The word meditation in Sanskrit means familiarization. It means to become familiar with the nature of our own mind, but that takes practice.
So the people don't born with awareness, has to be cultivated.
No, I would say people are born with awareness. What has to be cultivated is the recognition of the awareness, not the awareness itself.
Exactamente. Gracias. So, le preguntamos al profesor, entonces, ¿todo lo que no reconocemos no está pasando? Bueno, reconocer es la clave realmente de todo. En inglés tenemos una expresión que se dice, es más fácil decirlo que hacerlo, ¿verdad? En castellano también la tenemos. We have the same expression in Spanish. Encarnar esto requiere mucho tiempo y el tiempo que requiere es justamente la práctica. Normalmente nuestras vidas están muy orientadas hacia lo externo y no tenemos nunca tiempo de familiarizarnos con la mente. En sánscrito, meditar significa familiarizarnos con la mente. ¿Nacemos con conciencia o se cultiva la conciencia? Lo que se cultiva es el reconocimiento de que tenemos conciencia. That's beautiful. I love really this part when you say that we are the recognition that we have this. So, and going back to the psychology, and when we see, for example, the mental pattern or the concept of self, how we can connect the concept of self with consciousness? What is the relation between self and consciousness?
Yeah, that's a very important and complicated and deep question.
I'm sorry.
No, I always love your questions, Koncha. So thank you for asking. A lot of, over the course of development, a lot of our awareness is focused on ourself. It begins with a focus on our bodies. And as we learn to move in the world, as we discover our bodies, there's a lot of awareness that is focused on the self. And this is the beginning of the development of our concept of a self. And this is something that human minds do. It is something that we do. It's also something that can create a lot of suffering when the concept gets very rigid and we identify with it excessively. But also there is a way for it to be a healthy sense of self, where we can have a sense of ourselves as interdependent, a sense of multiplicity. It's not just one self, but there are many selves. And so we can develop a healthy sense of self that will decrease the likelihood that this narrative will get in the way and cause suffering.
Beautiful. Thank you so much to make this the complicate easy.
Yeah, and I should also just add one other piece, and that is that here meta-awareness plays a very important role, because we can't develop a healthy sense of self without meta-awareness, because we need to be meta-aware of this narrative as we go about our daily lives. If we're not meta-aware of the narrative will control us. It will enslave us. When we are meta-aware of it, we can be liberated from it.
So the liberation is always about meta-awareness recognition.
It requires meta-awareness, yes, I would say. There are other things involved, but meta-awareness is very fundamental.
Thank you. La pregunta es, ¿qué relación existe entre el self y la conciencia? Dice, es una pregunta muy complicada y muy buena, muchas gracias por hacérmela. Podríamos decir que en el desarrollo del self aparece el awareness, la conciencia, y empezamos primero siendo conscientes por nuestro propio cuerpo, nuestras propias memorias, nuestra propia identidad, y poco a poco vamos descubriendo nuestro mundo, y ese mundo es como lo organiza el self. En el principio está el desarrollo de ese self a través de las experiencias, pero también nos crea muchísimo sufrimiento a los humanos, sobre todo cuando la mente es muy rígida y cuando está sujeta a muchísimas identificaciones con el self. Pero podemos cultivar otro tipo de self mucho más sano, más interdependiente, más múltiple, con multiplicidad de seres, y de crecer un poco la voracidad de este ser que nos constriñen. Meta-awareness nos ayuda a ampliar la narrativa de la vida cotidiana, una vida cotidiana que si no la abrimos nos puede llegar a controlar y a esclavizar. Desde luego, meta-awareness es uno de los elementos que tiene que ver con la liberación de la mente. So, what is the difference in between conscious mind and consciousness?
I don't really think there is a difference. I mean, when we talk about a conscious mind, it's a mind that has the property of consciousness. So I think that they're used very similarly.
Me pregunto si existe una diferencia entre conciencia y mente consciente. No hay mucha diferencia. Creo que se utilizan de maneras bastante equiparables. So, and what is the relation who exists in between mind, brain, culture, and consciousness? Is our consciousness fruit of the culture, or is something independent, or something that we co-create with the culture?
Again, that's another really complicated question. There are many neuroscientists. I would say that most neuroscientists equate the mind and the brain and basically say that the mind is what the brain does. It's the expression of the brain. But I would say that even from a hard-nosed materialist scientific perspective, that's a very limited understanding. We know that culture, for example, you mentioned culture gets under the skin and actually affects the brain, not just the brain function, but even the brain structure. We know that individuals who are raised in different cultures have different structural features of their brain, which is associated with different mental faculties. One example is that members of Asian cultures that emphasize the more extended view of the self as not something that exists within a single person, but is more distributed, say within a group or a context, they actually have larger area within the there's a specific place in the hippocampus, which is important for context processing, for apprehending the context. And since more of their everyday behavior is dependent on context. Scientists have shown that there's a part of the hippocampus which is actually larger in people who've been raised in such Asian cultures compared to those who are raised in North America or in Western Europe. And so this is one example of culture actually influencing the brain. But then we also know that other factors, like, for example, the gut tremendously influences the brain. And so it's clear that the mind is something that goes beyond the brain. There are many other things that contribute, and it would be a really excessive reductionism to say that the mind is simply the brain. And then, of course, there is the further challenge from the contemplative traditions that there may even be certain kinds of awareness, rudimentary awareness, that don't even depend on the brain, that may persist after the brain is dead, for example. There are certain traditions in Buddhism which hold that some individuals show a persistent awareness of a certain kind after a conventional Western definition of death. And if this is true, it would raise fundamental questions about the mind and the brain, although this is where there simply is no good scientific evidence whatsoever.
So it looks like to explore the consciousness, we only can use the science in a very little way. We need to do more introspection, Richie, meditation.
I would say we need to combine introspection or meditation with scientific methods of assessment. This is a project that Francisco Varela, the great Chilean neuroscientist, called neurophenomenology.
Thank you so much. I'm going to translate a little for a while. So, ¿qué relación existe entre la mente y el cerebro y también cómo se relaciona todo esto con la cultura? Bueno, podemos decir que el concepto que tiene Occidente sobre la mente y el cerebro es súper limitado, está muy restricto a lo que pueden demostrar y está claro que la mente y el cerebro va mucho más allá de lo que hemos podido demostrar y de sus componentes. La cultura está debajo de nuestra piel y tan debajo está de nuestra piel que afecta a las estructuras del cerebro y no solo a las estructuras, sino a los contenidos, por ejemplo, a los contenidos de las facultades mentales. Pongamos un ejemplo, en la cultura asiática el concepto del self está mucho más expandido y mucho más distribuido. Cuando hablemos del concepto del self, lo podemos encontrar asociado con áreas de contexto, cómo el sujeto se relaciona con el contexto, y eso es el hipocampus. Pero cuando en el día a día nosotros no somos conscientes cómo la cultura nos transforma y nos aprende, y cada día vamos dejando pasar más y más esta conciencia. El hipocampus de las personas asiáticas o de las personas norteamericanas o europeas es diferente, es mucho más grande y más distinto. Y otra área que también influye mucho en los procesos de la mente es el intestino, pero todavía los científicos no han hecho mucha conciencia de este hecho. El fenómeno de la mente y el cerebro es muy grande. Awareness, existe también otros conceptos de awareness mucho más rudimentarios que van más allá del cerebro. Por ejemplo, en las tradiciones budistas nosotros encontramos que hay algún tipo de awareness individual después de la muerte. Y esa, al menos en el concepto de muerte que en Occidente tenemos, y esa relación de la mente y el cerebro todavía no ha encontrado las evidencias. Podemos decir que la introspección, la meditación y la ciencia es una buena combinación para explorar más la conciencia. Y eso es justo lo que hizo Francisco Varela a través de la neurofenomenología. So you are talking about Francisco, or there's Francisco. What was the most relevant about consciousness from Francisco? What we never has to forget from him regarding consciousness?
Well, I think that his great contribution was to recognize that when we ask a person, a human subject, to introspect about their conscious awareness and provide a report to a scientist, that there's going to be a lot of variation in the quality of the report, in the extent to which a person is actually capable of reporting on their own inner experience. Most of the time we don't really think about this, and most people take it for granted that they can report on their own inner experience. But it's like a wine taster, you know, it requires cultivation. If you asked a person who never drank any wine before to taste some wine and comment on it, you would get a kind of very muddled response, very coarse, not granular. And so Francisco's insight was that if we're going to make progress in this project of neurophenomenology, we need to use people who are trained to inspect their own mind. And of course, this is what meditators do. They're trained to inspect their mind. And so the reports that you get from meditators should have greater precision. And if we're looking at the correlation between reports of experience and measures of brain activity, we should see those correlations be stronger in people who have learned to interrogate their own mind. And this is indeed what we find.
So we need to learn to recognize awareness, and we need to learn to interrogate our mind, isn't it?
Yes, very much so.
And as much as we interrogate our mind, our brain is changing.
Yes, this is what the research shows. So it is rather extraordinary that these simple mental practices, when they're done in a consistent way over time, they actually lead to functional and structural changes in the brain.
Thank you. ¿Qué es lo más importante que no podemos olvidar de Francisco Varela? ¿Qué es lo que deberíamos de recordar de él? Bueno, su trabajo ha sido súper importante, sobre todo su manera de abordar la introspección y cómo las variaciones en la cualidad de la introspección reportan cualidades diferentes con respecto a la meditación. Muchas veces le pedimos a una persona que observe su meditación, pero no sabe observar, y entonces, ¿qué cualidades puede aportar? Es como si le dieras a alguien un buen vino, pero no tiene ninguna experiencia en probar el vino. No puede tastear, no puede probar la granulosidad ni las gamas y matices del vino. Creo que hay que regresar y progresar en la neurofenomenología. Y Francisco lo que dijo es que había que entrenar a explorar la mente. Y eso eran reportes precisos que debían de hacerse mediante personas que sabían meditar y que tenían experiencias precisas. Cuando observamos las correlaciones experimentadas explorando la mente y las actividades de la mente en sí, vemos que aquellas personas que aprenden a interrogar a la mente tienen más facilidades para cambiar ciertas áreas o regiones del cerebro, porque prácticas simples mentales pueden cambiar las funciones y las áreas y estructuras del cerebro. That's so good. Good talk, Richie. What we forget about consciousness in the time that we have, what do you think you will love to add about consciousness in psychotherapy?
I would simply add that every human being is endowed with the gift of awareness. It's very precious, and in order to recognize this basic nature of awareness that all of us have, we need to learn to recognize it. And this is what requires practice. And so just as we have these wonderful bodies that we take care of, just as we have, for example, teeth, and everyone brushes their teeth every day, we should also nourish our mind by cultivating this recognition of awareness. And it is a great gift. And if we treated it as this precious gift, I think the world would really be a better place.
Gracias. Unas últimas palabras o algo que hayamos olvidado imprescindible sobre qué es awareness y qué es la conciencia. Bueno, creo que añadiría que cada ser humano tiene awareness, y reconocer esta básica naturaleza de la conciencia es justo eso, reconocer que hacer prácticas y que tenemos un cuerpo precioso es importante. Por ejemplo, piensa en los dientes. Cada día te lavas los dientes, pero muchas veces no le prestas atención. Si fuéramos capaces de nutrir la naturaleza de la mente, la recognición del awareness sería un gran hecho, y así como nos tratamos, pues podríamos tratar mucho más al mundo. El mundo sería totalmente diferente. Thank you so much, Richila, for coming to the class.
My pleasure. I always enjoy it. You ask wonderful questions, Koncha.
Thank you. I think I am cultivating my consciousness.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time.